Welcome to Playing the Culture Game. In this series, we dive deep into very interesting people and culture topics with very interesting guests, all whilst playing a game of some sorts. And today, my awesome guest is Myriam Hadnes, founder of not one, but two amazing product services to do with facilitation. So the perfect guest to have on the show when we're talking about facilitation is an essential leadership skill. So I'm really looking forward to diving into this topic all over a game of backgammon with Myriam. So Myriam, how are you doing?
Thank you so much for inviting me, Viren. I am good, and I'm excited to play backgammon with you and to chat about one of my favorite topics, facilitation.
It should be good. I'm looking forward to playing backgammon. This will be my first official game, but I'm really looking forward to it. It looks like it's historically a very rich game. So I'm looking forward to playing with you, but also diving into this very good and interesting.
Yes, and I learned the game from my dad. I had to learn it because he was playing with my mom until he won all the time. So she stopped playing with him. So he had to train me too.
So the question I have is, did you eventually topple the master?
I think very rarely. My father's really good. And that's why everyone said, or most people say that it's a game based pure on luck. And since my father has always won against me, there must be some strategy behind that as well.
You're like, it can't be that. It can't just all be luck. It's impossible. He can't, or he's very, very, very lucky. Awesome. So what we'll do, I like starting with just a couple of questions for the audience to get to know you and for me to get to know you even better. So I guess the first one I've got for you is, what's been a recent highlight for you? A recent can be just over the last couple of weeks, and it can be something related to fun, play, whatever you like.
I have two. I have one related to my private life and one related to my facilitation life.
Let's go with two highlights.
Yes. Recent highlight, I celebrated my 40th birthday. Yes. Which is somehow for me the sign that finally I'm allowed to feel as an adult.
Finally,
yes. Time to grow up. I invited my best friends from all over Europe to come and spend the weekend with me. And that was really meaningful. So that was my highlight.
Oh, how cool. So getting your friends together, celebrate, bringing on the big 4-0. And he said finally feeling like an adult, or like a symbol that it's an adult. So tell me why the 4-0 is different to 3-9, to 3-8, 3-7. What is it about 4-0?
It feels like it's finally the time where I don't want to impress anyone. I can just be who I am. I finally am finding out who I am and find comfort in that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not so much different to the 3-9 or the 3-8, but it's definitely different from the 3-0.
Yeah. How funny that evolution, hey, over time of like getting more and more comfortable with who you are in your own skin and worrying less about.
How was it for you?
Yes, I 4-0 this year as well. So we're both the same age. It was quite, I found it funny because I think always in my head I've been like 4-0 is old. So I think I had a different experience to you, whereas like not necessarily the grown up piece, but I feel like, oh, am I old now? Is that and that was the the question I started to ponder more and more. And I think, I don't know, the realization I've come to, age it's just a number. It is this feeling of oldness. You can trick it. You can, by continuing to have fun, looking at ways you can achieve new goals that you couldn't achieve when you were younger or didn't achieve when you were younger. So I think I'm not old, only by, yeah.
And then it's funny, right? You have kids. So I think it's the best way to realize how old you're getting, that your kids are getting older. Yeah. And at the same time, they're keeping you young.
They do. They really, I think that one of the most magical things about children is they just help you see, like, because of the questions they ask and the way they approach things, they just help you to see things with wonder again and fascination again. It's pretty cool. Like simple things. They'll ask you just a simple question, like, why is this the way it is? And you're like, actually, I have No idea, and that's a really good question. Let's go find out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
yes, don't feel like I momentarily felt like an old person, but not anymore. So, and you mentioned you had that's your personal highlight. You had another highlight
Yes.
from the professional setting. Yeah.
My professional highlight was last week when I hosted a workshop at a conference, at a virtual conference, on the topic falling in love on Zoom. And it was very scary and very daring. And after the first two activities, I had to tell the participants not to fall in love too quickly because there was still 45 minutes to go. Because they filled the chat with love messages to each other, and they got so engaged and warmed up, and it just filled the space with such a warm glow. I could, and it might feel weird to say that about a space that is only virtual.
Oh.
But I could sense it, the connection that were appearing between the participants and amongst the group. And it really felt meaningful to me.
How cool. I wonder if there's an opportunity to survey all the participants in a year or two and see if anyone did kindle up a romance and actually did fall in love.
Yeah, so the idea popped up when I was thinking of this New York Times article, 43 questions to fall in love over.
Yeah.
And I think many, many people around the world did do the questions and did fall in love. I was like, well, questions are only one tool in our facilitator's toolbox. So maybe we can fall in love quicker than 43 questions if we put in some other activities.
That's amazing. And I think
Really cool.
it sounds really cool, especially because I'm sure you hear it and see it all the time. People saying, oh, you can't connect meaningfully or genuinely in a virtual environment. And I personally don't buy into that, but it's amazing that even in a very short amount of time, you've managed to kind of create that feeling of connectedness, even in a virtual setting, which I think, many people are arguing it's not possible. So
now I'm waiting for a corporate to invite me. I would like to host a workshop for a corporate who, with the ambition to bring their employees closer together.
Oh, amazing.
Spread some love for them.
Well, hopefully this is it. We're putting it out to the universe and it comes back.
Please call me.
Please. Amazing. And I'm sure this topic of, connectedness and virtual connect, I'm sure that's going to crop up later on when we talk about the superpower of facilitation, because I think, I have no doubt that part of the reason it worked was some of the magic dust and skill that you sprinkled into the session, for sure. Terrific. And so the next question I've got for you, I'm going to draw the question from a game called Quicks. It's one of my favorite games, but I'm biased. So what will happen is I'll draw the random question, I'll read it out to you, and then you can choose to redraw if you don't like the question for whatever reason. That we can keep redrawing until you're happy with the question that we have got. And the question I've got for you is, what is one of your biggest accomplishments in the context of career work and professional development?
Biggest accomplishment, career work, professional development. Interesting question, because I think one obvious one would be, I did the PhD, which sounds like a big achievement. On the other hand, it felt easier. Well, of course it was difficult, but in hindsight, it felt easier because it was very clear and it was structured what I have to do. I think maybe the biggest accomplishment was to quit my public sector job, the comfort zone, and redesign my life and eventually start my own business. And to keep on reinventing, iterating, doing new stuff whenever the next kind of crisis hits. So I think that was the biggest accomplishment, to just throw myself out there and to have the trust that it will eventually work out.
Yeah, amazing. So basically stepping from what would have been more of a known quantity into a totally unknown quantity, and making that leap was an accomplishment. And tell me about I don't know if you have a moment where you kind of made the leap and you just realized, oh, what have I done? And did you have one of those moments? Or I'm sure you've had many since the first one, but can you remember the first moment you had, like, I'm now doing something on my own? Was there a moment you had? It might have been the next day, a couple of weeks after you'd kind of started.
I think when I won my first client. Yeah, winning the first client, I didn't believe it until I really signed the contract and eventually went there. And I think it's actually funny because so I founded my business. I became a freelancer in Amsterdam, and it went so fast that I couldn't actually believe it. I think it took 24 hours and cost me 50 euros. And suddenly I had the papers and it was like, oh, now I am a freelancer. Oh my God, what now?
What do I do next?
Exactly. So now I have to become serious. And then funny enough, I founded, so I converted into a limited company beginning of this year, 2022. And it was almost as easy as becoming a freelancer. So this was maybe the moment that you refer to, like, oh my goodness, what have I done?
What have I done? It's official.
48 hours, 800 euros. So it was slightly more expensive. But then suddenly, oh my goodness, now this is a real responsibility.
It's a real company. Now I've got to do.
Yeah, the playtimes are gone.
Yeah, well, or they've just begun in a different way.
Yeah, and it actually feels nice to pay myself a regular salary and not to have an excuse. No, we shuffle the money, and no, it's a good grown-up moment.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it? The whole business maturity piece and hitting each milestone. I mean, even starting at the beginning of that moment of getting that first customer, someone that believes enough in you to, hand over some money, and it's, this is pretty cool. All on my own, I've found a customer, and it's and then for where you are from then to now, those milestones are pretty special.
True. Yeah, the moment you have the first one who believed in you.
Yeah.
Do you remember the moment? Do you remember the first customer client who believed in you?
Yes, definitely. I think for me it was equally, when you mentioned that, it resonated with me a lot. That you're basically taken, when you've jumped ship, you've got nothing. You don't have, whilst you still have obviously all your experiences, skills, and everything you've done, you as an business entity is you've got nothing. So for someone to back that and go, yeah, actually, I like what you're talking about, and the fact you have total free reign over how you're designing, what you're designing, how you're selling it, what you charge for it. And so it's quite special when you go, I've managed to, at least for one sale, piece it all together, where someone goes, yep, this seems like it's really, really good, and I'm willing to give it a shot. It's a special moment. And for any new thing, I think, in that time I've launched a couple of different products, and every time that the first person or business to go, yep, it's always a big yes moment. Awesome. Okay, so what we'll do now is we're going to move into playing a bit of backgammon and talking a little bit about the special topic today. But before I kind of do that, one of the things that, as a result of this series, is that in the game we'll donate some money to a charity of your choosing based on the outcome of the game. And if the outcome of the game is I win, we'll donate 75 Australian dollars. And if you win, we'll double that and put in $150. And I believe the charity of your choosing is Reporters Without Borders. Is that right?
Yes. I think that free journalism or unbiased journalism became more and more important over the last years. So go for the journalists.
Awesome. Great cause. Totally agree. We're kind of bombarded with, we can't exactly say unbiased journalism. It's, so I think actually journalistic integrity and getting good quality news sources to make informed decisions from is so powerful. So,
and to take time to find the real information, I think journalism without time pressure, without political pressure. It's a good thing to support.
Yeah, that's right. And it's, I imagine it's harder and harder in the society we live in with the kind of on-demand news, 24-hour news cycles. It just becomes difficult. So great cause. Thank you for choosing it. And we are going to be playing backgammon. Now, I am a backgammon newbie, but I usually explain the rules to the game before we start for anyone that hasn't played before. So you'll be able to tell immediately now if I'm going to be a very, very, very easy opponent or just an easy opponent. In backgammon, I believe there's 15 checkers, and the checkers are laid across the board in a pattern. And our aim is to roll some dice and move these checkers. And our aim is eventually to get the checkers off the board, and I can't remember what the word is when they're off the board, but we've essentially got to move all 15 checkers off the board by the end of the game, and the person that does it first wins. That's my rudimentary explanation of backgammon. And our topic is... Sorry, Myriam?
Just one thing. What is funny about backgammon is they play backgammon all over the Middle East. And in every country of the Middle East, they play it slightly differently. So whenever I play with someone else, it's usually we have to rediscuss the rules, and then we can blame the different rules for losing.
Yeah. Well, luckily we'll have the computer deciding what's the right rules and wrong rules. So hopefully it's, I was going to say rules in my favor, but I don't know what I'm doing. So it's...
And I'll blame the rules if I lose.
You blame the rules if you don't win. And so we'll just get the game set up now. I'll just make sure that's going, and what I will do is share my screen as well. So start with the first question, which I ask on these episodes, which is, you could have picked any topic in the world for this particular chat, but you wanted to talk a little bit about facilitation being the essential leadership skill. And I just wanted to know, why is that topic the one you've picked for today?
So for me, let me first see. Did I already roll?
I think it might have rolled for you to start, yeah.
So I picked... Why did I pick the topic? Because I believe that facilitation is much more than just aligning activities to stimulate conversations or to solve problems, but it's a way to bring people together and to make everyone heard. And that if we talk about burnout, if we talk about disengagement at work, if we talk about too many meetings, then leaders shall really know how to facilitate. And I'm a little bit confused because I cannot move the checkers.
Are you? I think the way it works is you click on it and then it tells you where you can move it.
Ah, okay. So I'm moving in. Yes.
I think you're red. That might be the other thing.
Ah, here we go. Flop. Now I understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Has it moved you? Does it tell you whose go it is?
Yes.
That would be handy as well. It says that I was waiting for your opponent.
Oh, I need to say, you didn't see. Yes.
There we go. Awesome.
But I don't see the updated screen on yours.
Well, I can roll it now. Oh, I see what you're saying. There you go. I think there's a little bit of lag between once we move and then when it shows up on the...
And on your screen, I'm the different color.
Oh, that's what's confusing.
Okay,
that's good. That's funny. We could start the question again, because I think it's so hard multitasking, figuring out the new technology,
and otherwise it's just
and once we get going,
it's authentic. We'll get into it.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
And I think authenticity is a big part, I think, of leadership as well, because we create safety and trust by being authentic. And facilitators, I think, do have to be authentic.
Oh wow, you've dropped in so many interesting things that I want to dive deeper in just the first couple of sentences.
Move.
Well, I've actually figured out the best way for me to do this is to ask the next question, and then I can move slowly in peace. So you mentioned the first up, you talked a lot about, there's some I think organizational symptoms that are pretty prevalent at the moment. You've talked about people feeling burnt out, talked about them feeling kind of disconnected, those kinds of issues as well. And so you mentioned it makes sense if we're bringing people together, we feel like there's too many meetings. Leaders are at the kind of cause of, or at least they have a lot of power to help move the needle in the right direction. And you think facilitation is the skill here. So do you mind diving deeper into that a little bit more? So let's say I'm a leader listening to this and kind of going, okay, you've piqued my team is burnt out. We're struggling with too many goals. I don't know how to run meetings effectively. What's the role of facilitation there to help remedy some of these things?
Thank you. And thank you also for mentioning the word meetings again, because I think if a leader is listening to that and wants to know why facilitation is important, I would even go beyond the meetings. So when I think of leadership, then it's different than management. So a leader doesn't want to go in to tell their people what to do, but to create a space that everyone feels enabled to do what they're supposed to do in order to fulfill their role. So they need clarity about the role, and they need enough of, let's call it psychological safety, to actually dare to do whatever they have to do. So in this sense, facilitation, which comes from the Latin word facile, which means easy. So it's a leader's purpose to make it easy for the people to find the clarity, to ask the questions, and to do the work, so that the leader can actually focus on creating the space for them, empowering them. And these are facilitation skills. That's what we learn to do when we're in charge of group processes, is to create a space that empowers every individual, that gives a voice to everyone, to listen deeply, to challenge the group. And I think these are exactly the skills that a leader has to do, so that they don't have to do the work, but their people do the work. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely makes sense. I think it's, one of the things we talk about a lot when we say leadership is you're the person that's helping the group achieve more by helping them to come together, and your role in that is bringing that group together and helping them achieve more. And it sounds great. We say that we could say this should be the way we operate. So what do you think are some of the reasons then that leaders maybe don't step into this role of facilitation, be it within meetings and beyond? What are some of the things you think make it difficult for leaders to embrace this?
I think what makes it difficult is uncertainty. So the moment that we hand over power or power to other people, we give up control. So we don't necessarily know what will happen. And I think that it's also a question of confidence. So if I doubt that I have confidence on two levels, if I doubt that I have the competence to do the work, then I don't want anyone to question me. So it's safer for me to tell other people what to do and to control them, because then it doesn't leave any doubt or any room for doubt to be voiced.
Yes, I'm the person with the answers. If I tell you what to do, I clearly know what I'm doing, and that masks maybe any perceived incompetence or lack of competence that there may be.
Yeah, exactly. And then it also requires trust or confidence in the competence of the team. So if I'm, instead of telling them what to do, giving them the space to explore themselves and to take ownership, then I clearly need to trust their competence, and I need to trust them that they will ask a question if they don't understand.
Yeah, so interesting. So two really interesting angles there, which is the trying to, I guess, maintain. I will only look to facilitate and gather input if I have enough confidence in either my own capability or confidence in the group that they will do the right things if I open it up to them.
Yeah.
So if these things around confidence are the thing that's, I guess, stopping people stepping into this skill of facilitation a little bit more, and we say that facilitation is a key skill, we talked about all the reasons why we need to do this. What are some of the ways then a leader might look to bridge either of those competence gaps?
What are the reasons why they might bridge the competence gaps?
Yeah, the confidence gap. Yeah. So let's say I'm either not stepping into this skill because I'm not confident in my own status or worth, or I'm not stepping into this role because I doubt something to do with my team. How do I bridge that if that's one of the things that's potentially stopping me from embracing this more?
Good question. I think let me start with, I think if someone is in a leadership role, clearly someone has trusted them to be able to do the job. It's like, to link it back to what we discussed earlier, we have the first client. So there is one person or one entity that trusts that we can do the job. Right? So once the leader is in this position, I think just recognizing that independent of our status and where we have arrived in our career, we'll always have imposter syndrome. It's just human. We all have it. I was fortunate enough to have a mentor who was a director at the MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Maybe the smartest person I've ever met. And I spend a lot of time at universities, right? So I have met lots of smart people. And he confessed to me over dinner one day that he had imposter syndrome and that sometimes he was wondering when his colleagues will find out that he's actually just making it up.
Yeah.
And this was this moment of deep relief. Like, if he has imposter syndrome, everyone has it.
Everyone's got it.
So, right? So if a leader feels kind of insecure about their own abilities, then I think stepping up the game and just embracing it and saying, okay, it's normal. I apparently know what I'm doing. And then enabling the others to actually take the lead of their own decisions or take space. And then I think it's resisting the urge to do the work for them, but finding out with them what is the best thing to do. And then something like a workshop would actually be a good way to start, or kind of a guided conversation to find out with them and together. And that's where then maybe more technical facilitation skills would come in.
Yeah. So really interesting. So what do you think would be then the starting point? I think you mentioned there is kind of letting a lot of what you talked about earlier is managing the process so the kind of group can have better input in what would be a starting point then for a leader? Okay, I want to dip my toes in a little bit. Let's say I want to look at my next meeting and I want to bring some facilitative skills to this. I kind of believe that this is the future. How can I start dipping my toes in as a leader?
I think there's lots of literature out there on basic facilitation skills. And I think it all starts with two things. One is the mindset to just dare and to speak less and listen more. And to start with, I think if a leader wants just to have the first test, the first tiny little facilitation test, then start a meeting with with the check-in. That's the name we would use in facilitation, which basically means everyone who is present will have time to use their voice to arrive in the meeting.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
So you can start with one question: what's on your mind today? Or what's your internal weather report? Or what are your expectations from this meeting? Or what would make it meaningful? Or one reason why you don't want to be here, right? And I think even with the question, one reason why you don't want to be in this meeting can have the magic effect that A, you acknowledge that it's okay not to be here. B, you give everyone the opportunity to state what else they're busy with, to create some empathy that, okay, we all have full schedules.
Yeah.
Or maybe someone has a personal issue that is important to them, and then have empathy that maybe their mind might be a little bit cluttered. And then everyone has used their vocal cords already. Everyone feels present. And there is research that shows that if you have, the earlier you have spoken in a meeting, the more likely you are to speak up again. So then you make sure that everyone will be involved and engaged. And last but not least, I think if you invite everyone to speak right at the beginning, you also show them that you want everyone to be there. So everyone has a role to be in the meeting.
Yeah.
And by that, you immediately include the people and they feel ownership to the content. Because what happens very often is maybe people are over-invited, and then you have many around the table who actually don't have a role, don't have a reason to be there. So they will suck the energy out of the space just because either they feel bored or they feel uncomfortable because they have nothing to say. Or if they say something, others feel kind of uncomfortable because they will be like, why is this person speaking? What do you know? What do you have to contribute? So it gets odd immediately if you invite people who are not supposed to be there.
Yeah. And I like it because it's not you mentioned part of it is daring to step into this space and asking a question like that. As a person that may not have done much of this, it might be a little bit uncomfortable because you don't know what answers are going to come up, but it's quite also a gentle way of starting things and also introducing a lot of the benefits that you've mentioned. But it might feel quite brave for a lot of people to do this if they've not done anything like this before.
Yeah. And I think it's your turn again because you kicked me out and I cannot jump in because I have 2 5s. So you can roll the dice again. I'm blocked. I'm in prison.
You're in prison. Is that right?
Yeah.
It's not letting me move. Normally it says, can you move the prisoner one out first? Can you click on the prisoner one first? Because I think I remember, the prisoner has to come out first before
interesting.
You can move, yeah.
Different rule.
Is this a different rule? This is
a different rule because, yes. Oh no, it's 5 instead of 6. Sorry. I thought that I cannot move. Although actually I can move.
Because you move the prisoner out, I think.
Prison.
You're putting me in prison. Oh no.
Yeah, I put you in prison. And here we go.
So one of the things you mentioned is being brave and stepping into the space of facilitators. So I think that's an interesting concept to explore because whilst I think some of that is on an individual to have a bit of courage to do it, I think there are things that potentially the organization can do to support leaders to step into some of these things a little bit more. So I'd be interested to hear your take on how can the environment and the system be shaped by the organization to help leaders feel more brave to step into these facilitation spaces.
Although it's becoming a buzzword, I think the key is psychological safety.
Yeah.
Because for the leader to ask this question, what is the one reason you don't want to be here, is leaning into the unknown and then having the bravery to deal with whatever is showing up in this moment. And for this to happen, the leader must feel that someone has their back as well, that they can make space for that. So, for instance, when someone is feeling the pressure coming from above, being blamed for bad results, being blamed for not being fast enough, productive enough, then obviously they will pass this anxiety, this stress to their people. And I think it all starts that, so we can only create psychological safety for others if we feel safe ourselves. And psychological safety means that you're creating a space where everyone feels that they belong, that they have permission to speak up, to ask questions, or even to challenge the status quo. At least these are the 4 stages of psychological safety, according to Timothy Clark. And I really believe that if we do have an environment where this is possible, then the team will thrive. But the thing is, if the leader doesn't feel safe enough, then they cannot pass that on. So again, if the leader feels imposter syndrome, if the leader feels that they don't know the answer, they will dismiss everyone who's asking a question. And if my team members are asking a question or challenging my decision, then I have 2 options. I can either be open to it and be curious and take it seriously if I feel safe, secure, and empowered, or I can dismiss it and blame them or make them feel stupid. For instance, so when I train psychological safety, I usually share one anecdote from me during my my PhD times. So when I was a PhD student, it was my task to solve problem sets for the master students. And one day there was this problem set and I couldn't wrap my head around. I didn't understand the answer. So I went to my supervisor and asked, can you please explain me this exercise? And his reply was, oh, Myriam, it's very easy. You just do blah, 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 blah. And here we go. And the way he replied to my question, so it cost me a lot of courage to ask him and to admit that I didn't understand. And when he said, oh, it's so easy, and then just did the exercise, I felt so stupid that I did not dare to say, I still didn't understand it.
Yeah.
So I went home, I tried to understand, it was very difficult. I went to the exercise for the master students. And what happened, one master student raised their hand and asked the exact same question. Myriam, I don't understand. Can you explain? And I was, mid-20, beginning 20, insecure. So my answer was, oh, it's very easy. You only do... So I repeated exactly what he said. And they never asked a question again.
Yeah.
I never asked a question again. So the way he replied to my insecurity and my question destroyed the safety of me feeling secure enough to dive deeper. And I just passed it on to the next level. And if he would have said, oh, thank you for asking, and would have taken time, then I would have done the same with the students. I would have felt safer to go back to him to ask the next question. And the students would have learned more.
So that ripple effect from the most senior leaders through the organization in a number of different ways, it sounds like. Yeah.
Exactly. So if the leader asks a question to their manager or to their C-suite and they say, you should have known that, or you figure it out.
Yeah.
Then obviously he or she will mirror or copy the same behavior, most likely to their teams.
And I imagine that this high pressure environment. I mean, this is what people talk about, the C-suite. It's high pressure. You go and present to board or exec. It's going to be, people get stressed out because the type of environment that either they perceive or that is actually at play when you get to the very senior level. So is this something you see from your experience? Does that tend to be, is it quite high intense, high pressure, lower psychological safety in the upper ranks? And then is that the cause then of or a cause of this rippling through a business or an organization?
Yeah. At least that's what I've observed a lot.
Yeah.
And what honestly really breaks my heart, when I'm called to facilitate a workshop for corporates and there is a senior leader and maybe in a briefing call, I already sensed that there's a lot of pressure, a lot is at stake. And then you can feel it in the air in the session, even if it's online. And if then the body language shows that the senior leader is actually not interested in really engaging the participants and really taking the time to first create the trust and the safety before doing the hard work, they're basically breaking everything, all the possibilities or opportunities before we've even started.
Yeah.
Because we cannot expect people to throw out their best creative ideas, to dare to challenge, to question, if they are not sure whether they're going to be blamed, bullied, or shamed in the next 2 hours.
Yeah.
So, and senior leaders often they want to rush to the results, to the action plans, although it's first important to connect. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's all those things you've just mentioned there about people being, creating this environment of people being willing to challenge things, come up with new ideas. I mean, this is almost, I imagine every organization would say this is something we want, but maybe accidentally they're kind of creating an environment where it doesn't happen. And obviously, if we kind of go back to the beginning of our conversation, it sounds like facilitation is one of the key skills to create the right environment for some of these things to thrive and foster.
Yeah.
So,
and I think some of the key skills are facilitation skills. So you create an environment to thrive and foster by giving everyone the space to speak, to be themselves, to be authentic, to question, to ask, to contribute.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess the question I've got here then is, it sounds like part of the reasons for some of these things not happening is this organizational pressure. Maybe it's from the top around getting results, getting quick wins. So how do we kind of balance the two? Because we want to be making progress. There is pressure to deliver and do things. But, I'm obviously biased in the same school of thought as you, where sometimes we do need to slow down to unpack things better. But how do we kind of manage that balance better? What do we do to manage this tension between needing things done fast, needing things quickly? We're all really busy, and the other end of the spectrum, creating this more time and space to build connection.
It's a very good question. Yeah. And I think we really need to force them to slow down, because, it's such a buzz sentence. We need to slow down to speed up.
Yeah.
And I wonder what it takes I wonder how we can help leaders to experience that, to really understand. Because, so maybe everyone has to go running. For me, I figured it out recently when I went back to running. And I was exhausting myself and I plateaued. And then I got to read this book about running. And there it was written that most runners do the mistake that they run too fast for their out of ego and not slow. Too fast out of ego, but not fast enough because they don't have the strength.
Yeah.
And in order to increase your pace in running and in order to increase your strength so that you can actually run for a longer time, you need to slow down significantly. So slow down so that you feel ashamed when everyone looks at you while running. So when your ego kicks in because you're not running fast enough, this is the pace you should run. So I put my ego in a backpack and I went kind of running so slow, and it was magic. It took me 2 or 3 weeks, and I increased the pace. I now run almost double the time that I used to, and I feel better with it. So my entire body and my mind experienced the meaning of slowing down to speed up.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think this is what we need to do.
It's very interesting you mentioned running, because I've recently taken up running after not being a runner. I used to play a lot of sport, and every time I'd go for a run, I'd try and run as fast as I can, be tired, and it'd be a terrible experience. And it'd be like, I'm not running. I'll just stick to playing sports. But only recently I've also uncovered this similar thing, which is like you just need to slow right down, and everything else follows. So it's powerful experiencing it though. Yeah.
And maybe for parents, I'm not a parent and I'm talking about all these parenting tips. So fake. I do have a niece. And what I observe is when a child is really upset and screaming, and you want them to get to school because otherwise you're coming too late, right? You could push them and say, we have to go faster, and then they will scream even louder and it will make up a mess, and then they throw their stuff around and they throw away your keys and you will never make it. Or you can slow down, sit down with them, listen what their problem is, give them a hug, tell them that you love them, and then you leave and you arrive earlier than if you have a big mess, and you have a better mood. And it's exactly the same system, right? You have to slow down, deal with whatever's present. And then if everyone is in a good mood, you can even run to school the last 100 meters because the energy is there.
Yeah.
But with the screaming kid that you're dragging behind, you cannot run the last 100 meters to arrive on time at school.
It's very accurate. And I think the other part, which I'd like to add to that, is doing it in the slowed down version is also a lot more enjoyable. You feel less guilt. You've had more fun. It's actually been a better process for everyone involved. Like no one likes being dragged, and no one likes dragging. Yeah, so a very apt analogy, very accurate as well. There you go. And so I definitely feel that from a parenting point of view. And so I will totally agree with you. Actually, I do use the cliche a lot with a lot of the things I do. I talk about slowing down to speed up. A lot of the work is around goal setting, and for me, goal setting is an activity where you do have to slow down to really set the right goals. Don't just rush through, set the default goals. Spend some time slowing down, discussing, setting the right goals before you move forward. So I totally agree. I'm totally on board. From my observations, though, what happens even when an organization buys into this is they will do it, but things get back to the way they were. I don't know if this is similar in your experience and observations as well. Lots of good intentions. We get a good dose of doing the right things, which is kind of slowing down, taking time in meetings, but the other habits creep in. Is this something you see from your experience? And have you seen anything to go, how do you circuit break what seems to be the default in the environment we operate in, which is fast paced?
I think it's maybe human to fall back to our old patterns once the shit hits the storm.
Yeah.
The fence.
I like shit hitting the storm. It's good. It's even bigger. It's even bigger than the fan. It's
I think it's just where our brain works, because we're so used to the old patterns that if we're really stressed, by default we fall back into what we've done all of our lives. That's why we forget about all our good habits when we get stressed, and we stop exercising. Again, I realized that I'm a better person, I'm more productive, I'm faster in everything I do if I go on my morning run. If I'm very stressed, I have a full day, then I believe, oh, I skipped the run, and then I can get work done in the morning.
Yeah, straight away.
Guess what? But guess what? It takes me longer to do the same amount of work. If I go for a walk during lunchtime, then if I come back, I'll be faster in whatever I do. So, and the best thing to let's do that. To spice up the game a little bit. So I think the best thing to do, yes. It was a stupid move, but I had to do that, otherwise it gets boring. I will not blame the rules.
No, I actually think I noticed with backgammon there's a score which I think tells you how well you're going, and I think you're going very well compared to me. Well, so I'm gonna have to have some major comeback here.
Oh, but it's your turn, right?
Yeah, it is.
So I think to acknowledge that we will fall back in our old patterns. So what can we do to avoid that? How can we maybe support each other, find ways to maybe have accountability partners? And accountability partners is usually best in groups of 3, because if we're in groups of if we're in groups of 2, it's like, let's try it again. It's like going to the gym. Alone is maybe difficult, and if you go there if you have one accountability partner, and maybe that's just a women thing. It's like, I don't feel like going to the gym. Me neither. I have this, I have that. Let's just meet for coffee, and then you meet for coffee. But if there are 3, it's more difficult to actually to cheat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love pre-mortems. So to anticipate what will go wrong. Is it my turn or is it your turn? It's my turn.
It's still saying your turn, yeah. You may have done the moves. You may have one move left, or...
Here we go. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah. Totally fine. You're having the conversation and playing.
Not about the game.
It's not about the game.
It's not about the game. So in a pre-mortem exercise, you would look at the goal or the outcome you want to achieve and anticipate everything that you could do to fail it. And then in the next step, see, okay, how can we avoid this failure? So you're basically already building a strategy on how to prevent yourself from failing.
Yeah.
Yay!
Oh, you got the doubles. That's but it ends up being 4 4s, does it? Do you end up getting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bam. And one more.
I like the sound effects. Oh, look at that. Yeah. Put me back in jail again. So, we've talked a little bit about then, I think, at the beginning we spoke about, the benefits this skill of facilitation brings to leaders. We talked a little bit about one of the important things here is around psychological safety, and that kind of filtering through from the top for leaders to feel comfortable to try these skills out more, and part of that needs to be role modeled. We've talked about that environment. We need to slow down to speed up. So I think slowing down being, if we're slowing down, it's going to give us again more opportunities to practice positive facilitative behavior. And then we talked a little bit about kind of accountability and helping make things stick. I guess is there anything that's cropping up for you front of mind going, what's kind of missing from that? If we're kind of, I guess if we're trying to step into this space and go, we're role modeling the right behaviors, we're really trying to slow down, we're trying to make things stick. Is there anything that you feel where it might still fall down, where we might not get the positive outcomes we're hoping for?
Yeah, what just came to my mind is the actual practical work environment. So to practice the mindset of a facilitator as a leader, in order to achieve better outcomes with the team, it's also to think, how can we make it easier for everyone to work? And how can we reduce the amount of meetings? How can we reduce bureaucracy?
Yeah.
How can we be mindful of the meetings? And I have the impression that very often in organizations, meetings are scheduled less for the team to come together and discuss something, and more as a kind of to-do item in my calendar. I have to do something, I have to report back, and I need to nudge myself to do the work. So, let's invite everyone so that I can report, so that I can force myself to actually do the work. Then what happens is the meeting arrives, I haven't done the work. So maybe I prepare for 10 minutes beforehand, or I just use the meeting to waste everyone's time to mask the fact that I haven't done the work. And then just discuss things that are actually not so relevant. And all of that comes from cognitive dissonance that I don't want to be the person who didn't do the work.
Yeah.
And I think this just requires self-awareness that, yes, we are all humans. What are the ways that we are actually distracting ourselves, and how do we soak others into this distraction exercise? Because I think many meetings are just unnecessary. And if we would dare to, or if leaders would empower their people to decline meetings where it's not clear what their role is, to decline meetings where it's not clear what the topic and the outcome is, or all meetings that actually could have been an email, I think this would already be a great step in the right direction.
I think that's such a golden one. It's almost like if you can make that the focus as an individual, like, let's cultivate this power to decline if you don't feel like the meeting is going to be a good meeting, useful meeting, because that really puts the onus then of the person running the meeting to do more, to make it either more inclusive, clearer about what the outcomes are, less selfish as well. It can't just be for you as the person running it. There's got to be almost like a what's in it for me for others, or they need to be able to at least be able to see that. So I think cultivating that kind of environment, it could be a really neat starting point. Yeah.
And stopping back-to-back meetings. What I also observe is in most organizations, you can just book someone's time in their calendar. Yeah. And then they would find a 30-minute slot in the week. Yeah, there's still a slot.
There still is time available. Poor person.
There still is, exactly.
They'll probably be eating their lunch or going for a walk.
Right? What does it actually mean? That the person doesn't have time to prepare it, doesn't have time to unwind. And maybe we need calendars that automatically block 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after each meeting, just to take care of our biological needs, to check our emails between meetings, to breathe, maybe to read the memo so that we can prepare a little bit.
Yeah, I think you've got some of the technological ways, if we can have things that, technology can facilitate us not getting into bad habits in the first place. So even just hey, you're booking this back to back. Are you sure you want to do this? Like it's, or some of those little prompts and nudges to kind of go, hey, is this the right thing to be doing? Is your invite doesn't have an agenda in it. Are you sure you want to send the invite out? Just these little nudges that might help us go. All it is a second, because I often say just jumping on, booking a meeting in, without the thought being done beforehand, it's an easy thing to do. It's an easy thing to jump into someone's calendar, book it. It's not the right thing to do, but it might feel like the easier thing to do. And these, nudging people into the right behaviors, it's that whole slowing down to speed up again. It's like, okay, yeah.
And on that note, similar, also slowing down to speed up in emails. What if there was a rule that you cannot reply within the first 12 hours or 24 hours to an email?
Yeah.
If there was a rule that you're not allowed to reply immediately, this would mean that if I have, because many emails also, okay, I'm too lazy to actually search for the answers, so let me ask someone. Which sometimes it's not even bad will.
No.
It's just it's laziness, which is okay. But let's be mindful what we actually do with it, and how can we then create opportunities to stop that and to give ownership back. Are you really sure that you want to send this email to put your work task on someone else's plate?
It is, though. It's almost like it's the it's that path of least resistance, isn't it? If I can just ask someone and it's quicker than me searching, then I'll do that. But it doesn't necessarily have the consequences thought through, and the consequence of interrupting someone, the lost time for both people to sit in a meet, whatever it might be. Again, it's perceived to be easier. You get the answer quicker, but there's a ripple effect to the noise it creates.
Yeah.
So I guess the next question I got for you is then maybe looking a little bit. So what's your evaluation on the state of facilitation? I liked how you put it, facilitation as a leader. Is that the phrase you used?
Mm-hmm. As a leadership skill.
Yeah. What would be your evaluation on where we're at? There's certain skills you can look at and go, look, where they're generally speaking, there's good maturity here, there's poor maturity here. What would you say is facilitation maturity like with leaders across most organizations? I know it's a very general question, but I'd like to kind of hear what you observe, where you think things are going well, where you think there are opportunities for improvement at a general. So this is a very general question, general observation. Where are we at right now? If we go, this is a key skill, how do we think we're faring as a, as a population?
Well, obviously, I don't have enough information. I don't know all the leaders, but my guess would be that we're doing fairly badly on listening and enabling. And I think it's often also the false belief that leaders have to do it all by themselves. So no one says that the person inviting to a meeting has to facilitate it. So if a leader would just enable their team members to facilitate the meeting, then they would have more capacity to listen to what's said, because they don't have to do it all. Or leaders who invite to a meeting have very often the impression that they need to do all the speaking. And I have the impression that the least someone is prepared, the more they blabber. And usually leaders are very good in thinking on their feet, right? So they come to a meeting totally unprepared. In order to mask their unpreparedness, they would just speak and fill the space so that hopefully nobody realizes that they haven't prepared. But what happens then is that everyone is frustrated and they're taking up too much space instead of opening the conversation, asking a question, letting the others speak, and then replying to that and having the extra time to actually make up their mind and mentally prepare.
Yeah. I think that's it. Even the very initial thing you said there is so interesting. The assumption is, if a leader sets the meeting up, it's almost the default assumption is that they're the one that's going to run it. We can even just flip that as a paradigm and go, like, how can we bring others into the process? We don't have to do it all ourselves. And again, I think these are good assumptions to bring up and tackle, because is this necessarily true? Does the leader always have to be the person facilitating, or actually can this be an instance where others are brought in and actually there's an opportunity to do that and the leader doesn't have to wear the entire burden? So you mentioned that there's a couple of areas where you feel like, the maybe it's not as strong as it could be. How do you kind of come to that? What do you kind of see? What do you observe to lead you to the view that it's potentially not as strong a skill as it could or should be?
Yeah. So what I observe is distraction, too much going on. And if you're not present and if you're not focused, then you cannot really listen. Then you're more in a reply mode, in a listen to reply instead of listen to understand. Too many meetings, too little time to actually think.
Yeah.
I think that's really, I think time is really a problem to think of quality instead of quantity.
I think that in and of itself, isn't it, an interesting one, is if the volume of meetings is high, I mean, that's going to give you some indication that the quality is probably going to be low, because as you mentioned, the good meetings, they will take time to prepare for them, time to do things afterwards. And if we've got too many, we're simply not creating the right environment for high quality to emerge. So actually, if you step into an environment, and one of the things people say is there's too many meetings, would you say you could safely make the assumption that the quality is likely to be not great?
Totally.
Yeah.
And even if the quality of the meetings is great, then a meeting is only, you don't do work in meetings.
Yeah.
Right? You do the work after a meeting or before a meeting. So if you only have meetings, when are you going to do the work?
Which is what people often complain about when they've got, they're in back-to-back meetings. They're like, well, when then do I fit in the work that I'm meant to be doing? Which I guess then leads to either people not feeling like they're achieving what they need to achieve, or they're starting to work extra hours, which then brings us back full circle to this feeling of kind of burnout and overwork. That people
and
experience
there's
a lot of
research that shows that the single best indicator for happiness at work is a sense of meaningful progress.
Yeah, the progress principle. Yeah, it's great.
yeah, exactly. Wonderful book. Teresa Amabil, I think.
Yeah.
And this is so true, and I think it applies to every part of our life. If we feel a sense of meaningful progress, that we can do something and have an impact, we feel better about it. But when we sit in back-and-back meetings, we feel drained and not much things happen.
Isn't it so interesting then? Yeah, so this skill that we're talking about, part of the skill then is also, hey, we're not just because we've got this skill doesn't mean now we all of a sudden run lots of meetings, and it's actually probably quite the opposite. We're reducing the amount that we run. But when we do them, we're applying these strong skill. Yeah.
And something that came to my mind recently was that facilitation is actually also, it's not only to make the conversation and communication easier in a meeting, but it's making the entire flow easier. And I think if we slow down and rethink the processes and think, is it really necessary to do that? How can we maybe automate it? Or there's so much opportunity with automations nowadays. And as an entrepreneur, we have to learn that, right?
Yeah.
Because we can either think, okay, we hire an additional VA or we are automating it. So we better delegate to a machine. It's cheaper. Oh, this was stupid. But in corporates, I have the impression that most of the employees, they are not even aware what there is that they can automate and how many of these repetitive tasks are actually unnecessary, because there's so much in the hamster wheel that it's difficult to step back and think, okay, how can I make my work easier?
And I think
how can I facilitate it?
I'd definitely say that's one part of it, is that, again, the slowing down to think about, okay, how could we do this differently? And I think the second barrier I kind of see people run into is, even when we identify those opportunities, it goes back to the word you mentioned before, the bureaucracy to actually make those changes, to kind of go, actually, this automation would save us tons of time. Instead of just being able to do it, we've got to go through layers of bureaucracy to get kind of sign off to maybe sometimes do relatively straightforward automations, and it makes it, all too difficult. So if we're kind of moving on to maybe taking a bit of a future-focused lens to this skill of facilitation, how is this skill going to, do you think, evolve and change in the near future? So what do you think are some of the things that are likely to come up which will either make facilitation easier, harder? How do you see this space changing from a skill set point of view?
I think that we're at the very beginning of facilitation to become a skill set that leaders are actually aware of, or even HR departments. I often think of the beginnings of the presentation skills boom.
Yeah.
Where every manager was sent to presentation skills training. And in order to have more impact on their audience, more impact on clients, more impact on employees. And I can see the potential for facilitation to be the same, that in the near future, all the leaders and managers will be sent to facilitation training, because they can have more impact on their teams and on their customers and clients eventually. And it would start with, very easy, the low-hanging fruit of how to guide through a conversation, how to ask better questions. I think that most leaders are asking the wrong questions. Or most people are asking the wrong questions in general. If you ask a question where there is a clear answer, you can ask this question via email, or you can Google it.
Yeah.
But if you come together at the same time, synchronously, to spend time and energy together, ask the questions that requires where you're looking for different perspectives. Where you want to create wonder. And for these kind of questions, you need time and curiosity.
So you mentioned the comparison to the presentation skills boom, where a lot of people kind of at least understood that this is a key skill. It's going to help us get better outcomes. What could be the catalyst to drive this for facilitation, do you think? What's kind of missing? Because I personally, I'm biased, but I kind of go, if it was going to happen, it should have happened now, because we just went through a period of radical environmental change where all of a sudden having to do things very differently in an online hybrid environment required a lot of strong facilitation skills, but we didn't get maybe the uplift in the skill as we thought. So what do you think is going to be the catalyst to create more awareness and change here, that actually this is essential? As leaders, you're constantly bringing groups together. What's going to create that, I guess, desire to drive this, do you think? Or what's missing from the current environment where there isn't as much?
Yeah. And maybe you're right. I totally agree. I thought that with the pandemic and the working from home, it will change a lot. I think it wasn't, it sounds weird, it wasn't long enough. So I think many have realized that something has to change, and that most meetings are a waste of time and energy. And so now they might have realized it, but it was too short to really gain the skill set and make the change.
Yeah.
So hopefully now the awareness is there. And I think also the hybrid challenge, that suddenly we have meetings in our calendar. Some are online and some are in presence. So this means that we need to be much better organized, and if we schedule a meeting in someone's calendar, we actually have to realize, okay, if they need travel time, we cannot schedule back to back anymore. So I think we'll run into a big disaster with hybrid, and then organizations realizing that something has to change, because for hybrid we have to be so much more structured and organized.
Yeah, really interesting point that the catalyst is going to be potentially that many organizations are moving, if not already in a hybrid operating model. That's going to create extra strain and pressure to get better at how we run our workshops and meetings. And that might be the thing that really tips it over the edge to go, hey, everyone needs to get better at this skill. So I think lots of interesting things to consider there. I think, in terms of the field of facilitation, what's been, slowing us down and what's going to get us to place more emphasis on this really important skill. I guess the last question I've got for you then is, what's on a bringing it back full circle, what are you personally looking forward to in your own professional sphere with the work that you're doing at the moment? What's it kind of exciting you most at the moment? What are you looking forward to most in the near future?
To be honest, what I'm really looking forward to is to spreading the word, the love, and the skill of facilitation. And to come back to my initial check-in, to help organizations to spread the love, to bring people together and to connect and to make them experience that we can create connection and a sense of belonging even through the screen, and that an entire organization would benefit from that, bringing some humanity into the workplace.
Yeah. Amazing. I love the mission that you're on. I love all the things you're doing in this space, the communities you've created, the messages that you talk about. So I'm really excited to see how this kind of further unfolds, and how we can kind of bring more people into the fold with the skill set and the realization that this is such a superpower, and it's such an essential skill for kind of where we need to get to in the future. Thanks so much for coming onto the show today. I'm going to give you the win, because I think backgammon looks like one of those games where once it's in this direction, there's only one way which is going, which this looks like it's going to be a clear win for you. So it's been great playing my first game of backgammon with you. Thanks for taking it easy on me. And I've really, really enjoyed the chat.
Thank you so much for, thought-provoking questions. I really enjoyed that.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, that's good to get the seal of approval on the questions from you as well. Thanks, Viren.
Thank you.
I'll see you again soon.